welcome to another edition of the NCBI podcast. I'm June Tinsley, Head of Communications and Advocacy with NCBI. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Maria Greenan, who lives in Cavan and is a piano teacher. And she is more than happy to share her experiences with us. So thank you, Maria, for joining us.
You're welcome.
And great to have you on board. And I suppose if you want to kick off the conversation by just telling us a little bit about yourself. I know you were diagnosed with glaucoma as a young child, but if you can just tell us a little bit about that instance and kind of how you coped with your diagnosis as when you were young.
So I was born with congenital cataracts first. So as far as I know, they were removed fairly early on. And then there was kind of a few years after that where my mom was fairly adamant that there was something else wrong, and I was really sensitive to light, and I was kind of falling over things, and this kind of thing. And so eventually, then when I was around 4, it was discovered then that I had secondary glaucoma to the cataracts. So I think I was around 4 or 5. So we were actually living in London at the time. And they do start school quite young there. So I think I was starting primary school around that time. So I would have missed a lot of school because of surgeries and things like that. So with glaucoma, it's to do with the pressure in the eye, and my pressures would have been very high. So they were really just trying to take control of the pressures, and that was done through a lot of surgeries. So I have to say that there was kind of a long period of that from I was 4 till I was about 11. And I really don't have a very, it's not a bad memory for me. I don't have a memory of being kind of in distress over that at the time. I do remember constantly just wanting to be back in school, it was more of a inconvenience for me. Okay, we have to go into the hospital again, right? But let's get back to business kind of thing, So I was in Moorfields Hospital in London, the eye hospital there, for my surgeries, and the staff there were just phenomenal. I don't remember kind of being, afraid, or, I would imagine, I can only speak for my situation, but looking back on it, that situation was probably more traumatic for my parents in reality than it was for me, because I probably didn't realize the severity of that situation
right
at that age. I don't think I realized what the risks were with some of those surgeries, and because they were essentially trying to save my sight.
Yes.
And it really took a lot of surgery to eventually get to a point where they put in, there's a special name for them that I can't remember, but they're essentially like drainage tubes. I think it's a pretty standard operation now, but I think I was the first child they had put them in ever, as a kind of a last resort sort of thing, and they ended up working really well. But I do think, looking back on it, probably for me, it was okay, to be honest. I was just wanted to be a kid, I'm luckily I didn't understand.
Yes, I suppose kids are so adaptable anyway that it was your normal.
Yeah,
so
it
you weren't
was.
to know
Yeah,
anything else.
I think so. And I think I was lucky in school as well, in that there wasn't really a big deal made out of it either. So once I'd go back, the other kids and stuff, I didn't have any problems in that way either. So it's not as if that was my whole life. It was like the hospital was one side, but the rest felt relatively normal.
And did the school have to make any adaptations for you to either put you closer to the blackboard or make the books available in large print or any of those kind of things?
Well, I could never see the blackboard. No matter how close I would have sat, I would have never seen it. But the RNIB, which was, I suppose, the equivalent of the NCBI in the UK, they had got a classroom assistant for me. So I had the same lady, which is mad. I had the same lady all of the years I was in school in London till I was, I think, 11 or 12 when we moved back home. The same lady with me every single day in school. And she took, she kind of whatever the teacher was asking us to do, she would do she was sitting beside me and would do for me. And I did have a CCTV in the classroom as well. So any books anyone was using, I could sit at that and it would come up on the screen for me. So there were quite a few things in the classroom like that, that did make things just so much easier. I would have never had that situation of seeing the blackboard or any of that kind of thing. So, but I never had to deal with that. And then when we came to Ireland, it was quite a different scenario then, because there really wasn't the same facilities here at the time. So that it was more then that it became a bit of an issue in school, because even when we were kind of moving back, there was sort of the question of where do we, what school would even take me? Like my mum wrote to quite a few schools. Some didn't reply. Some just said, no, we can't cater for her, so we're not happy to take her. And then the school I ended up going to, which was the Loretto in Cavan, the principal replied to my mum saying, well, let me meet her and then we can see where we're at. And he was an amazing man, and he's absolutely mad passionate about music, and that was kind of where my life was going, even already at that stage. So when we met him and we had a good chat, and he was like, "We're just going to make this happen." And
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was so brilliant. So he ended up, it was an amazing situation. He ended up getting me a classroom assistant of each year it changed. So it would have been a girl that would have just done her leaving cert, that was a really good student, but that was taking a year out before college.
Okay.
And she got paid then. So for that, I don't know how they organized that, but there must have been some kind of funding, I'm guessing. And of course, she would have known all the teachers. She'd just been in school there, and like she would have known all the courses and everything. So it was a brilliant situation. Like, and only for him, really, he went above and beyond. To be honest,
Isn't that amazing? How one interaction can have such a positive influence on your life?
Yeah, totally. And like just this kind of open-minded kind of, just to kind of have the presence of mind to say, do you know what? Let me meet her, rather than just read the letter and like he just wanted to meet me, I think, just to get the human side of it and then make a call, I guess, which was, and in life, like regardless of disability, I suppose that's, people need to do that more probably, actually.
Very much so, and then to find the common connections, and in this case, it was both of you had a love of music.
Yeah, totally. And actually, when I was in school, I think it was kind of in maybe from third year sort of onwards. There was one situation where I was in PE. It's quite a funny story, but they were playing badminton, and I was like, "Look, I'm grand for this. Like, I'm fine to sit out. I'm not offended." And the PE teacher was like, just give it a go. And I was like, no, like this is silly. But anyway, she did make me give it a go. She was like, just swing the racket. So I was like, right, okay. So I was swinging the racket, and one of the girls in my class was like, Maria, we haven't thrown it yet. I was like, oh, for God's sake. And that was the last time I ever went to PE. And I just mitched PE after that. I shouldn't say this, but I did mitch PE after that. And I used to go and just play piano for those PE classes. And when I finished school, what the music teacher said to the principal, she mitched PE the last 3 years to go and play piano. And he said, yeah, I know. I used to go and sit outside the room. He said, I used to check when she was on PE and then go up and sit and listen to her practicing. So he just really he just loved it. He loved the music, and he was such a great man. And he was an older guy. He retired the year that we finished school, that my year finished. But he was a really special person in that whole kind of teenage sort of journey, very, very special man.
And obviously, music is where your strengths and passion lies. So how did you get into it? Is it a family connection, or is it something that you was it innate in yourself?
I think, again, funny, like, fate. My dad is a builder, and we were obviously living in London at the time. And I think he was maybe gotten out a house or something like that. And there was like an old piano in one of the houses, and he just took it home. And I was like maybe 4 at the time. So I must have been kind of tinkling away at it. And then mum and dad then put me in for lessons from then. And I can't say that, I do this as my job now. And looking back, I wouldn't have said, it was groundbreaking now the way that I was. But it was just it was just natural. It felt like me. It's the only way I can explain it. And I was always going to be a musician, like from as long as I remember. I never had to, filling in the CAO or any of that stuff. Like I never sort of had to think about any of it. It was just
Yeah.
always just the way it was. And I just played all the time, all of my free time, lunch times, after school, just constantly played all. And I was kind of known for that in school, which was nice. I was known for that more than I would have been known for my disability,
Oh, yeah,
which
which is
is
fabulous.
really, yeah, which is really great. Yeah.
And did you have to think adapt your tactics to learning music because might have not been able to see the keys as clearly as others? Like, did you
Oh,
have to
yeah,
learn it
big
by
time.
ear or by memorizing it, or what was your tactics?
Yeah, it was really, yeah, it's very different to the sort of the average. So luckily enough, mom and dad, when they first were getting me a teacher, they got me a lady called Susan Wynne in London, and she specialized with teaching students with visual impairments. So, and I think possibly other disabilities, I'm not 100%. So she taught me completely, I learned completely by ear.
Okay.
But when I wasn't wearing patches, or when I was kind of like sort of out of hospital, I guess, she did teach me to read away from the keys, so I could hold it close and things. So I did know how to read music and all of that, but I learned completely from memory. She would play, I would copy, this kind of thing. And that would have then, like as a teenager, then when we moved back home, I would just like put on CDs and just learn stuff off CDs. And CDs, imagine they're not a thing anymore. Uh, and yeah, so then, but the issue then, I suppose, came when I went to go to college to study music in the conservatory in Dublin. The music is so advanced and it's so long that that really wasn't kind of an option anymore. It's just too complicated to learn completely by ear. So that took then we had to try, sort of change tactics completely then. So my teacher there, she would enlarge the music to like A3. And I would say, like obviously with piano, you play with two hands. So I would hold, say, the music in one hand and hold it up close and memorize it by looking at it,
Okay.
memorize that hand, and then swap over, memorize the other hand, and then put them together. So that was quite hard. The start of that now was a really hard process because it was sort of changing a habit of a lifetime. But
Yes.
the music was huge. Like just to put it in sort of perspective, like I was lucky enough to play a concerto in the concert hall, like as a soloist with an orchestra,
Wow.
and that piece was like maybe 40 minutes long, just one piece.
Wow.
So like you can imagine, it's like well over 100 pages of music there.
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
can't sit and listen to that for, and it was obviously very advanced, like kind of complicated stuff. So you couldn't, it would be very hard to pick it up by ear. So yeah, there has been a few adaptations along the way for sure.
And
But it's been
and
a
now
good
as
challenge,
a well, it certainly sounds if you've risen to those challenges and exceeded at them. And I suppose because you've got such a natural strength, it's easier for you to do it. And I suppose now as
Yeah,
a piano
definitely.
teacher, have you uh, changed how you teach as well? Because I'm guessing some of your pupils will not have a vision impairment. So have you adapted your teaching
Yeah,
styles as well?
well, none of them do, funny enough.
Okay.
None of my students have visual impairments. And really I should probably put myself out there more for, it's just never kind of came along, I guess. I did have one student for quite a few years who was completely blind, an adult. But other than that, no, none of the children. So obviously they can read and I teach them to read, and they play from sheet music. So I have to have my own copy and they have a copy on the piano. So I can
Yes.
kind of say, oh, let's go from this bar or this bar. But the thing is, the kids know, like I'm very open with them. about it. So they might say, oh, what about this part? And they'll point to it on my score. They know I won't see it on theirs, So
Yeah.
it's not, you do get used to it. I suppose my only sort of issue, weirdly, would be if in kind of COVID times now, if I was to be in the same room as a child, I'd have to sit so far away from them that I wouldn't be able to see their hands. So that would be a problem, but I haven't had to deal with that yet.
Yes. Yes.
But apart from that, no, it's, kids are brilliant. And actually, I feel that it's probably, I did as a kind of younger person have a bit of a worry that parents wouldn't have the faith in me because of it. I did sort of think, oh, am I going to sort of have to prove myself here? But like, to be honest, the parents, the majority of the time, probably don't realize the severity of my visual impairment. They know, like they'd know by, you can sort of tell if you look at my eyes, or maybe by the way I would look at my phone, that my sight isn't very good, but they wouldn't realize that I'm actually registered blind, to that level. But
But
I
I
know
suppose
that
your credentials alone prove that
this is it.
you're 100%
Yeah,
capable of.
totally. And the kind of like, quite a few of the kids have gone on to study music, and a few of them are now teaching as well, or have jobs in music. So like,
That's a huge
that
accomplishment, isn't it?
the first time that happened, I swear I felt like I'd won the lottery, because someone had chosen a career based on what we had done, that is just that's the best thing that could happen,
Yeah.
really, So
And I'm
yeah,
sure
that alone,
that's probably the exact same feeling that your principal has, on
probably,
knowing the accomplishment that you've achieved because of he
I
had a bit of a
know,
role to play in that. And
huge
tell us,
role. Yeah.
how have you had to adapt because of COVID? And I know some of your students are adults as well as children, so COVID has meant that your teaching has moved online. So how have you
Yes.
adapted to that?
Well, to be honest now, I was living in Dublin, from I moved there when I was like 17 or whatever for college, until last year, and then the COVID situation happened, and I really panicked, because I thought, oh my God, like I literally have a job that completely revolves around me being right beside the kids. We play the same instrument, like I would be like touching their hands or their wrists, or you know, so I really did panic. And luckily enough, like I have a brilliant group of parents, and they were like, look, it'll be fine. Once you figure it out, like it'll be fine. Let's give it a go online. And that was fine. So that kind of started, but then things were kind of happening in the house I was living in. People were moving out and that kind of stuff. So then I ended up deciding to move back home to Cavan for the first time after years of living away. So that in itself kind of had its challenges. Second of all, I didn't know what the story was with the internet up here. I thought, oh
Yeah.
my God, like I don't know, because we didn't even have broadband actually in the house at the time. Like we didn't even have like proper Wi-Fi or anything. So like it was a bit of a nerve-wracking thing. Anyway, as it turns out, the internet is pretty good. And yeah, moving online, I was a bit concerned about it from a sight perspective. Of being able to really see their hands properly and stuff, through my phone or through the computer. But I have a Samsung phone, and you can do like, the triple tap stuff to zoom in and things. So to be honest, the online teaching is brilliant. I can probably, from a sight perspective, I can probably see more.
Interesting.
Yeah, of their hands and things, because I can't get that close to them in real life. That'd be so strange for them. Um, but yeah, so it's been really good. And I found that the kids, because nearly the parents are sort of out of the picture, apart from getting a text for payments or something, like because I'm kind of linked directly with the kids through WhatsApp. I mostly use WhatsApp. I just find the sound better than Zoom. But like their approach is they're just much more on top of things. And I think because they're not rushing after school to get to my house and all this kind of stuff. So the majority of my students are still in Dublin, and I have them. I'd say I don't have 3 students that I did have before COVID. I have all of the rest. Um,
Wow.
so
That's
I'm,
it. It shows huge adaptability on your behalf, but also on the children's behalf too.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I was down in Dublin to teach them live. I have a little venue in Ranelagh that I kind of rent out. It's supposed to be once a month, but of course with restrictions it hasn't been. And I saw them for the first time before Christmas since March. And just the excitement of, and the lesson was just so fun because we were able to play together. And it was, and I think it gave the kids probably a different appreciation for the lesson, and me too probably as well. So it's really enjoyable, and I've got quite a lot of new students then since COVID, because people have a little bit more time, and people have kind of, a lot of adults, it's something they've always wanted to do, and they suddenly sort of had the time and headspace to do it, and the fact that it was online. So that's been a real, that's been quite different as well, to teach.
And
I've taught.
are those new students based in Cavan, or are they scattered across the country?
Mixture. So I have quite a few now in Cavan. They're kind of building up, and the rest are Dublin adults in Dublin, new students. Yeah, total beginners, all of them.
And I guess in reality, then, as restrictions ease, you're probably going to continue doing some stuff online and then revert back to face when you're allowed.
I think I to be honest, from what I'm getting from the parents, I would imagine the majority will stay online because it's
Interesting.
convenient for the parents. Yeah, I think people realize that they were maybe rushing around a little bit too much. And I was funny only saying to somebody recently, there would usually be at least one or two cancellations per day before COVID. And now I don't know the last time I mean, it's way before Christmas that I got a cancellation. So it just goes to show that actually it probably came down to just trying to get to me physically was inconvenient, or there was somewhere else they needed to be with another child, or so
Yes.
I actually think I actually have a feeling that a vast majority will stay online. And my goal would be that I would be in Dublin maybe every second week, that I would just have that venue, and I can just travel down and see the kids. I don't plan to live in Cavan long term. I would like to live somewhere on the train line, but as you can imagine, getting a mortgage at the moment it's tricky.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that process actually, as a visually impaired person, I find quite difficult, because I don't have the option of living outside of a town because of the driving aspect. So I'm kind of by default having to buy somewhere more expensive. I have to, which seems a little bit unfair, but I mean, that's reality, I guess, isn't it?
Well, and I suppose it does influence the course of your life, of where you want to live, because of
Yeah.
accessible transport is such a crucial thing. And unfortunately, in Ireland, all road leads to Dublin, and that's definitely where the best public transport network is. And I'm sure you're experiencing that in Cavan. There are kind of limitations because of rural transport isn't as strong.
Well, yeah, totally. And actually, where I'm, like in our home house where I'm living at the moment, we're sort of a couple of miles from the nearest town. So if I want to even just go to the shop, like I have to get a lift or organize a lift or that kind of thing, which I'm really, really not used to from moving from Dublin. But I have a brilliant setup here from a teaching perspective, and we converted our garage to a gym and stuff, like, I mean, and we're in the middle of the country, so in lockdown that's a total luxury, I think.
True.
So you have to kind of count your blessings at the same time. Sometimes I get really annoyed about it, and it's quite hard on on my pride to ask for a lift, to want to go to the shop. But on the other side of it, there are a lot of things I have that people living in an apartment in Dublin don't. So, everybody is in their own sort of situation at the moment, I suppose.
True. True. And I suppose, Maria, just to kind of conclude, do you have any advice for people who might be listening and have recently been diagnosed with a sight loss condition, and might be having difficulties coming to terms, or just trying to um, adapt to their new normal?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I think be kind to yourself. I'm definitely guilty of this myself, of being a little bit hard on myself sometimes if I can't do something, immediately, or the same as other people. So first and foremost, I would say just, relax a little bit about it and be kind to yourself and ask for help if you need it. It's definitely much more of a bigger deal to you than it, to ask for it than it is for someone else to give it. That's what everybody tells me anyway. But second of all, I would say don't let it become that's not who you are as a person. Your identity and as a person is still the same. It just so happens that you can see less. And I don't mean to belittle that, the kind of situation, but in reality, that is what it is. You can just see less as a person, and your skills and your values, they're still the same, and your knowledge and everything, it's still the same. So really your goal is to essentially be that person and find ways around the sight aspects to just be that person, essentially. So, and there are loads of ways of doing that, like in my situation with the kind of reading of music, or there are lots of kind of things out there now, particularly with technology. I'm personally horrendous at technology, and that's not a side thing. I work with something that doesn't even plug in, so but there is a lot. And of course with you guys, like in the NCBI and stuff, there are people that have a lot of advice or a lot of experience, or they might be able to link you up with someone that's been in a similar situation, or that's in a similar career possibly. I mean, that's always a good thing, I think, isn't it, to try and touch base with someone that's in your career field even, or in your situation of maybe living on their own. How do you boil an egg? How do you tell when the water is boiling? Or how do you, simple things like that. I would just say, just make it your goal to stay as much yourself as possible. It's not your identity, essentially. That would be, for me anyway, that's what I never wanted. I never wanted to be just known as that person. Oh, that's the girl that can't see, that's because, I mean, it's not who I am. It's just my eyesight. Like,
it's just a part of you. I mean, to be fair, it's very sound advice. Don't let it define you, and embrace who you are and all the parts that make up who you are.
Exactly.
Very good piece of advice. And I suppose to any listener who is interested in connecting with NCBI services, feel free to contact our info line 1850 33 43 53. And our services are available right across the country, whether you're young or old, and span things, supports to help you living in the home, or education, or employment, or sport and leisure. There's a huge breadth of services there that can assist you. So please feel free to contact. But for now, Maria, I'd just like to say many thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us. Best of luck with the piano teaching business. It sounds as if it's absolutely thriving. And congrats on all your accomplishments in that area.
Thank you very much.